light the first candle to recognize Buddhism. Chaos is inherent in all compounded things. Strive on with diligence. We light the second candle to recognize Judaism. The truth is that love is the ultimate and the highest goal to which man can aspire. Then I grasp the meaning of the greatest secret that human poetry and human thought and belief have to impart. The salvation of man is through love and in love. We light the third candle to recognize Islam. There is no creature on or within the earth or bird that flies with its wings except that they are communities like you. We light the fourth candle to recognize Taoism. Human consciousness has not adjusted itself to a relational and integrated view of nature. We must see that consciousness is either an isolated soul nor the mere function of a single nervous system, but of that totality of interrelated stars and galaxies which makes a nervous system possible. We light the fifth candle to recognize Christianity. Open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all the needy. We light the sixth candle to recognize Sikhism. As all creation has the same origin and end, humans must have consciousness of their place in creation and their relationship with the rest of creation. We light the final candle to recognize Native American spirituality. Perhaps you have noticed that even in the slightest breeze, you can hear the voice of the cotton tree. This, we understand, is its prayer to the Great Spirit. For not only men, but all things and all beings pray to him continually in different ways. Spirituality in action. June's theme, protect the vulnerable. Translating Heartbreak into Action. This is by Terry Pate. As we increasingly understand the inseparability of the inner and the outer work, we are realizing that an important part of our work is to awaken ourselves and others into love and freedom and clarity. We are beginning to see how such awakening is actually a crucial dimension of even most grounded initiatives focused on tangible benefits to systems, structures, people, and the planet. So if you could just take these words into that inner sanctuary for a few minutes. So how good it is to know that we are absolutely awakened in consciousness, knowing our divinity, knowing our love, knowing our light, and knowing our magnificent energy that is surrounding us with God, that is in us and all around us at all times. It is that same energy that is orchestrating this service today. I know that from the Children's Church, the band, and Reverend Cece, and all of us, that we are absolutely blessed. This time together is in divine order and divine right action, that there is peace and love and joy celebrated today. And I give such thanks for this. Thank you, thank you, thank you, God. And together we say, and so it is.
First of all, it looks like when she cut and pasted, Clara missed the final N on the reading. It's Terry Patton. She left the N off his name. He is the author of the book for the month, which is called New Republic of the Heart. And it's a great big book. It's really big ideas, big topics, big subjects, and this whole year has kind of been that way. We're talking now about moving into the social sphere with a different consciousness, and it's a giant topic. And so we're trying to break it down in little itsy bitsy pieces that we can look at one at a time, and hopefully by the end of the year we'll have a better idea about how we move into the world and really change things, right? Really start to begin to create that world of our vision that works for everyone. Our de facto motto for 100 years has been change your thinking, change your life, right? We all know that. That's our motto. We know that if we change the thoughts that we habitually think and we begin to feel what it is that we want to see, we begin to feel it, and then we take action toward it, it shows up in our lives. If we want something different from what we have to first think about what we want and then develop a felt experience of it and then move toward it. We know this. We've all used it to make changes in our individual circumstances. But it's more difficult to see how that works with the big issues of the world, the things we face today, like poverty and homelessness and racism and misogyny and homophobia and xenophobia and planetary destruction and fear and all of those things that seem to be running rampant in our world. These are really big things that have to change if we, human beings, and the world are going to survive, right? I don't know about you, but if I watch the news, my heart breaks. If I spend more than 5 minutes on Facebook, my heart breaks. If I think about what I know to be true, that in 50 years we've wiped out 60% of the animals on the planet, my heart breaks. If I think about the kids in Yemen or across town who are hungry, my heart breaks. And I know people who say, oh, I never think about those things because I only want to think about what makes me happy. And I get that, and I believe the universe is calling us to something larger, calling us to a state of consciousness that is more than making our individual lives better, but includes making our individual lives better. It's a different state of consciousness. 100 years ago, our founder Ernest Holmes called this philosophy the religion of the 21st century, because he knew that we could and felt that we would evolve into what's required right now. We would grow and expand and become transformed to meet the issues of our day. See, it's time for our hearts not just to be broken, but to be broken open in such a way that we can hold this incredible paradox we're in, knowing that this thing that goes by 10,000 names, whether you call it implicate order or intelligence or God or whatever, the universe, that is real, and that the facts and circumstances in front of us are happening at the same time, and being able to see our way through the facts and circumstances based on what we know about that overarching order and wholeness and goodness. So in this month's book, Terry Patton puts it this way. He says, something unprecedented is required of us now if we are to survive and thrive. And that something new must be grounded in wholeness and consciousness. It is who we are and how we see that is necessary and holds the potential for the necessary radical leap. See, it's that radical leap the universe wants from us now. It wants us to so alter the way we view the world that we move into another dimension of living, one that lets us solve the big problems of our world, the ones that lets, and when we do that, the little problems sort of fall away because we see more clearly. We live from hearts broken wide open. Ernest Holmes said that the whole process of evolution was aimed at producing a being who could consciously cooperate with the evolutionary principle, which he called pure spirit. At first we're ignorant of this, he said, because we've not realized that spirit is at the root of everything and every form. But gradually we're brought to the realization that we are some part of this creative order. We are some part of it. And that which seemed to be externally imposed comes under our conscious control. And this happens as we become consciously aware of the presence of reality and our relationship to it. Reality with a capital R, and our relationship to it. That's what Ernest Holmes said about 80 years ago. And Terry Patton and many others are saying it today. We have to be able to grasp the essential wholeness of the universe and everything in it. We have to be able to view life from that sense of wholeness. We have to see through our habitual consciousness of separation, right? We have to be able to see through us and them and mine and yours and like me and not like me. We have to get a new visual field that shows wholeness and oneness, and we have to let our hearts break open to that wholeness. And that I think is our task as a self-conscious, God-conscious, if you will, species. Can we do that? I think we can, if we choose to be conscious of that which we're seeking. See, it's already here. We just have to learn to see it, the wholeness and the oneness. And we have to really realize the purpose of our evolution, which our founder tells us. He says this: there appears to be one persistent purpose behind the great forward movement of evolution, namely the expression of intelligence through creation into higher, finer, and more complex forms. We've seen that biologically, right? We all started out, and life on Earth started out with a single cell, and pretty soon that cell learned how to take sunlight and create energy from it, and at some point it totally altered and became an animal cell, and pretty soon a bunch of them got together and conglomerated into a creature that then started to have organ systems, and on and on and on and on and on, until, as Ernest Holmes said, one day the first human being stood up and said, I can think. And at that point, compulsory evolution ceased. And it became a matter of our conscious choices, because then it became cultural evolution. Holmes says, if we were to ask our imagination why this is so, the answer might be that spirit itself would remain a non-entity unless it were expressed. Even to the infinite, some form of creative expression and action is necessary, because otherwise it would just be a sea of consciousness, right? So we're here then to express that intelligence and that wisdom and that life with a capital L in higher, finer, and more complex ways. We're here to allow it to be expressed by means of us. And there is something that causes us to evolve, to progress. And Holmes says then our very problems are merely situations which confront us with the opportunity for greater self-expression. So here we are, confronted with some big ones, right? It's the ultimate opportunity for greater self-expression. It's the ultimate opportunity to create, first, life that allows life to continue, but also becomes that world that we see in our heart's eye, that world that works for all life. And so where on earth, where in the universe do we begin with that, right? It seems like we just look at it and go, I don't know what to do. Do you know what to do? I don't know what to do. I think we begin with learning how to see differently, learning how to live and see from wholeness rather than separation. And we will only learn that through our individual and collective practices. We don't learn it in society because wholeness is a radical idea in our society, but it's the most essential nature of reality. Reality is a whole. Matter and energy are not separate. Einstein proved that, right? Now the physicists tell us time and space are not separate. Our DNA says all life is our family. Wholeness exists, but it's such a slippery concept for our minds to get themselves around, because we don't know what the wholeness contains. We don't have an inventory, and we want an inventory, right? We want to know everything that's in this wholeness, but wholeness is infinite. We can never know that. All we can do is kind of approach it and apprehend it with wonder that it exists, that there is a wholeness that knits everything together. But that doesn't stop us from wanting a catalog, does it? We still want the catalog. See, in our modern society, instead of wholeness, we learn fragmentation. Have you ever watched a kid try and figure out how something works? What do? They take it apart and they study the parts, right? We learn a lot about the parts that way. But then if it gets put back together correctly, usually by mom or dad, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, right? If you have a part of a clock, it's a little piece of metal that kind of looks like a spear. It's not much until you put it together with the rest of the parts, and the whole becomes this wonderful thing that measures time and space against each other and compares them. Wow, how cool is that? We learn from separation, and now it's time to make the leap into learning from wholeness, contemplating wholeness. Stop for a moment and think about yourself. We think of ourselves as you and me, right? Not we, but here I am and there you are. If you stop and our environment is all around us, but stop and think what would happen if the environment were withdrawn, even for a moment. Our body minds would cease to exist, right? We need all this stuff that's around us. We depend on all the stuff that's around us. We're interwoven with all the stuff that's around us. We're interdependent with it all. That's the way it is. So while we cannot know the whole in its particulars, we will never get that inventory. We can apprehend it. We can see it and feel it in awe and in wonder. And when we shift our vision so we can see the whole as a whole, and the whole as the expression of life with a capital L itself, then we start to see things differently and think about things differently. And wholeness is the natural way of things. So there's something, there's a nudge, there's an urge, there's a pull in each one of us, even in the face of fragmentation, to know wholeness. When energy is fragmented, there's a pull within its own being to come back to its natural coherence and flow. So when we choose to move into our intuition of wholeness, we finally get to be able to see better the way we limit and condition our own lives and the life of the whole. That my life seems separate, but in fact is a unity with all life. There's an indivisible wholeness that's manifest everywhere. And evolution is how that wholeness unfolds, how it makes its implicit self explicit and visible. And this wholeness, once we begin to consider it and contemplate it, finds our way into our inner lives and begins to express itself there. You know, this is the Tao of ancient China, wholeness, right? That is the unapproachable Tao. It is the Brahman Atman of the Hindu Vedas. It is the nature and expression of Yahweh. It is the cloud of unknowing that the Christian mystics wrote about. It is the one life Ernest Holmes taught. Remember his little chant. There is only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. That's the wholeness and the oneness that all the spiritual teachers have all taught us. And now it's time to realize it. It's time for us to let our hearts break open to that new view of things. But there's a trick that we play on ourselves, first of all, that I just need to call into our awareness. We look at wholeness out there, right? We forget to draw the circle all the way around so that we're one with the wholeness. We contemplate the wholeness out there, and we forget that we're the center of the wholeness we contemplate. 360 degrees. All you see is wholeness when you're viewing the universe from that lens. We're right in the middle of it. And so we've got to be able to train ourselves into wholeness as opposed to apartness and partness. We need to be able to train ourselves to see the whole. So I invite you to spend some time contemplating wholeness, realizing that you must be contained. I'm not ready yet, Kenny, but that's okay. Contained in that whole. You have to sort of let your mental boundaries merge with the bigger boundaries of the one. I think that's the first step. The very first step is to learn to see and identify with the wholeness instead of what we perceive as fragmentation. You know, something startling occurred to me this week as I was reading Terry Patton's book. Like we're the first people in history to be able to see how our planet sits in the universe, you know, the sun and the other planets and the solar system and the galaxies and all of that. We're also the first human beings to see evolution as it happens. Its span is so short right now, we can see it for the first time. You can't see biological evolution. You can't see, 14 million years of very slow change that led up to us a couple 100,000 years ago. But you can see the evolution that's going on right now. It's so fast that once we intend to see it, we see cultural evolution like, speeding along. Think about one area. Think about a communications technology. When I was a kid, we had a phone that plugged into the wall, that plugged into a cord that was about that long. And you had to be there to use that phone, right? You had to be in the room where the plug was and the jack was, and you couldn't take it off into a corner to save, your mom and dad from hearing what you were saying. I know we all tried, but didn't work so well. Long distance, you waited until like late at night or the weekend, and even then it was crackly and expensive and really short. And I remember when television was black and white and turned off broadcasting at 10 or 11 at night. And some of us are old enough to remember that. There were science fiction movies where you'd have a watch where you could communicate with people. And remember the guys on Star Trek, they'd flip that thing out of their pocket and flip it open and communicate with their ships. Every one of us has that right now. We got that little pocket doohickey, don't we? And thanks to Apple, the watch is a real deal now. We have instant video communication with anybody in the world, anywhere in the world. Astonishing cultural evolution in a very short time. Everything in our life is like that. Technology, medicine, communications, media, education, entertainment. It's all evolved so fast we can watch it happening. And also obvious when we watch that happening is this fragmentation, right? Each area of our society is evolving in its own little bubble. Very few places do the things come together because so few of us realize that wholeness and that interdependence. We might think about what had happened if we lost our cell phones. Makes you hyperventilate, doesn't it? But if you stopped and thought about none of those things survive if what's around us isn't there, right? We're so interdependent with each other, with the people who find the materials for the components of our cell phones, people who create those components, the people who build them, and people who ship them, and the people who make them somehow hook up to the waves in the sky so that when I call you, you answer. We're interdependent with all those people. We're interdependent with the trees to stay alive, because if we don't have enough trees, we don't have enough oxygen, and then we all die, right? We're interdependent with the people who grow our food and the water that runs from the sky and through our rivers and oceans. We're interdependent with the insects. Did you know that like 60 of the 100 top food crops in the world are pollinated by bees? And you all know what's happening with bees, right? Among those, this is where it gets serious, are coffee and chocolate. I don't want to live in a world where there are no polar bears, coffee, or chocolate. That's serious business to me. We're interdependent with all of it. And until we start seeing the wholeness and loving the wholeness and cracking our hearts open to the wholeness, we don't have the first idea of what to do, how to work synergistically together to make it better. So I think the first step is that shift in our very framework of consciousness from seeing the separate parts to experiencing the whole. Now it's time. A whole that contains everything and that integrates everything, that protects and honors everything, that is the hope and promise of the evolutionary impulse that's moving in and as and through each one of us, but also through the whole universe. It is the universe wanting to experience itself and know itself and become itself through the process of evolution and through and as us. So here we stand. We stand at this moment of, as Terry Patton says, it's who we are and how we see that holds the potential for this radical leap we have to make. And so we get to choose. We get to choose wholeness or fragmentation, integration or more confusion, chaos or trusting evolution, trusting that impulse that is in us to create that world that works for everyone. It will be the way we are. It will appear the way we see it.